Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Citizens Oversight Committee regular meeting to order for Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. Welcome, everybody, and we'll start with roll call. Mr. DiMartini, would you like to call roll?
Yes, I will, Chair Wiscombe. Thank you very much. We'll start with Committee Member Jim Byrne. Here. Committee Member Steve Epstein.
Epstein, here.
Fine. Committee Member Jared Gorin.
Here.
Committee Member Susan LaFond.
Here.
Committee Member Frank Peter.
Present.
And then Committee Vice Chair Steve Liu.
Here.
And then Committee Chair Leslie Wiscombe.
I'm here. Thank you very much, Mr. DiMartini. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move to agenda item number 3, which is public comment on items. Any member of the public may address the Citizens Oversight Committee for up to 3 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the committee that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the committee. And the slide is up. You have 3 minutes to make comments. The slide was up to show how you do that. There it is. Okay, so just you want to click on the hand icon at the bottom of the screen. It's item number 1 shows item number 1 at the bottom of the screen. And then when the hand gets raised to speak, it's going to turn red, and then you're going to unmute yourself, which is number 3, shown there, when you've been cleared to unmute yourself and speak. So I'll just ask if we have any public comment on items not on the agenda.
Chair Wiscombe, I'm not seeing any hands raised from the public at this time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. And we had no written correspondence, so we'll close general public comment and we'll move on to approval of the October 28th, and the agenda says 2019, but it should say 2020 minutes. So if you all have those to review, does anyone have any corrections or comments on these minutes? And if not, I certainly entertain a motion to approve.
I move the minutes.
Okay, do we have a
I'll
second?
that.
Okay, great. So Committee Member Peters made the motion, and I believe Mr. Gorin, you seconded it, right? Okay, that's fine. And is there any further discussion on these minutes? Okay, hearing none, and feel free, those of you who are on audio only, to pipe in anytime if you have, if you need to, regarding the minutes or any other item on the agenda. Okay, so seeing no discussion, let's do a roll call vote, please, which is what we do when we're online doing these remote meetings on the October 28th, 2020 minutes.
So just to confirm, Chair Wiscombe, you want to go through and name each committee member and have you take a vote?
Yes, that's with remote meetings. That's now what's required for approval is roll call votes. Yes.
Just wanted to confirm before moving. Thank you so much. So start with Committee Member Byrne. Approved. Committee Member Epstein.
Aye.
Committee Member Gorin.
Yes.
Committee Member LaFond.
Abstain.
Committee Member Peters.
Aye.
Committee Vice Chair Liu. Committee Vice Chair approved. Okay. And then Committee Chair Wiscombe.
Aye. Okay, that passes, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7. That passes 6-0, 1 abstention by Ms. LaFont. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, now We're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is review status of projects funded by Measure C. And what we'll do here is we will have a presentation from staff, and then it will be followed by any questions only that the committee members have. Then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the item for a discussion amongst the committee members. So at this point, if you could all, those of you who have your webcams on, if you could turn them off and mute yourselves so we have, we can see the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Chair Wiscombe and committee members. I appreciate you all making time this afternoon for this Measure C Committee Oversight meeting. My name is Keith DiMartini. I'm the city's finance director. It's my pleasure to start the presentation this afternoon. And there are a number of staff that are attending this meeting this afternoon as well, who will be presenting an update on many of the capital projects that have received Measure C funding over the past few years, so that they can provide a direct update to the committee. Next slide, please. So the meeting objective for today, for this agenda item, really is for the Measure C Citizens Oversight Committee to receive a status on all of the projects that have received Measure C funding since that revenue measure was first adopted back in 2017. The agenda for this presentation is to provide just a really high-level overview of the funding allocations and the priorities of the Measure C district sales tax. Just as a reminder, I will provide a very brief overview of what the Measure C revenue has looked like over the past few years and what it's shaping up to be this current fiscal year, given COVID and all the impacts from the pandemic, and what the outlook is shaping up to be for the upcoming fiscal year. And then I'll turn it over to staff, who will provide just a high-level overview of the project statuses for projects that has received Measure C funding. And then we would be happy to take any questions or discussion that the committee members would like to have. So next slide, please. I'd like to first just remind the committee and the members of the public that are listening about what the funding allocations and priorities are for the Measure C funding. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes on the far left column what the priorities of the Measure C funding are as they were articulated in the actual ballot measure that the voters adopted and approved back in 2017. So you can see it lists here really prioritizing key infrastructure in regards to police and fire, streets and pothole repair, maintaining our neighborhood fire stations and public safety infrastructure, focusing on parks and youth and senior services, addressing homelessness, retaining local businesses, and so on and so forth. The City Council took that direction from the ballot language, and a resolution was adopted by the City Council just about 3 years ago, back in February of 2018, that set out the priorities for the first 5 years of implementation using the Measure C funds. And that's listed here on the far right column, where it really talks about planning and preparing for the new police station facility, again, maintaining local streets, replacing Fire Station 7, community projects such as parks and libraries, focusing on business district infrastructure projects, and maintaining many of the city's facilities and buildings. And so when staff starts reviewing and figuring out which projects are getting ready to receive and be eligible for Measure C funding as part of the city's budget development process, we go through that process and we bring that to the City Council during the public budget meetings starting in April and then in May, so that the City Council can understand what those priorities are and then make budget decisions based on that. We can go to the next slide, please. I want to provide just a very high-level overview of what the revenue projection has been for our Measure C funding source as a city and what the outlook is shaping up to be. Next slide, please. So it probably comes as no surprise, and this is something that staff presented during a really detailed budget work session that we held with the City Council just about 2 weeks ago, where we went through all of the major general fund revenue sources and what the trends have been and what the projections are currently showing for the upcoming fiscal year. And so this slide was information that has already been presented to the City Council. And it comes as no surprise that that COVID and the subsequent shelter in place and stay-at-home orders, and just the decline in the more traditional brick and mortar retail activity has really had a substantial impact on the Measure C sales tax revenue sources. A lot of that decline has been partially offset by some changes in some of the economic and sales patterns for typical consumers. Many people are buying a lot more things online, like through Amazon or Walmart.com or many other online retail establishments. And also, there continues to be a pretty decent amount of auto sales, both for new and used vehicles. All of that is the mix of changes going on in our sales tax revenue source. And so as you can see, there has been a decline in 2020, and there was a slight decline that is being projected in fiscal year 21, the current fiscal year, compared to last year. The current projections in the economic outlook into the budget year is that there will be a very high likelihood of a very slow but a steady recovery. But it will probably take a number of years, probably 3 to 5 years, where the city will really begin to realize sort of sales tax trends to what they were pre-COVID. And so the sort of economic indicators, just to reiterate, it will likely be a slow and steady recovery. It won't be this immediate rebound that many economists were previously talking about. Next slide, please. So before I turn it over to staff to give an overview of the projects, and really there have been about 30 of them, about 30 priority projects have received some form of Measure C funding allocation since the revenue measure was first adopted by the voters, about 30 of them. When we presented the annual accountability report to the Citizens Oversight Committee about 6 months ago, a little less than 6 months ago, back in October, we heard loud and clear from the committee that there was a desire to make sure that we categorized the projects based on the priorities that the voters and that the City Council resolution articulated. And so staff heard you loud and clear, and we incorporated that feedback into this presentation. And so each slide coming up here will show the projects that are underlying underneath those priorities. And so let me ask you to turn to the next slide here, Jen. And this first slide is all about the priorities for repairing local streets. And I'll ask staff to go ahead and make this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. I'm Jim Dewey, the Streets Operations and Infrastructure Manager. Good afternoon, Chair Wiscombe and committee members. I have with me Ashley Shue, our principal engineer, and she'll be covering some of the specifics of the projects that we'll be talking about. But just a brief overview. Repairing our local streets includes all of the asphalt overlays and the various surface treatments that we need to maintain our pavements. And it also includes a number of things like curb ramps and modifications, sidewalk repairs, and other things that are triggered as a result of major maintenance due to ADA, trying to meet the ADA requirements. Streets paving also triggers the need to improve storm drain systems like culverts and catch basins. And we've also been doing a number of upgrades to our traffic signal systems, including installing new pedestrian flashers. And that also coordinates with a lot of the upgrades that we're doing with our overlays when we upgrade those systems. If you recall back at the end of FY19, we moved $6 million from our FY20 projects, our pavement maintenance projects, and that was an effort to mitigate some of the issues that we had with our budget concerning the pandemic. And essentially, what happened was that we removed $6 million from our FY20 pavement maintenance projects to pay off the general fund loan to the Cabrillo Pavilion construction. And what this did is it delayed our whole pavement maintenance program by a little bit more than 6 months. So a lot of our projects that are rolling out this year are actually FY20 projects. We recently finished our FY20A project, and that dealt mostly with applying slurry seal to streets and doing a number of ramp upgrades and sidewalk repairs. And we're almost finished with our FY20B overlay project now. We've awarded our bid for our concrete work, which is coordinated with our streets crew paving work for FY21. So that includes all the ramps and sidewalk repairs that need to happen in Hidden Valley before our streets crew goes in there and repairs all the, repaves all the streets in that area. We've also scoped our FY20A project that includes slurry seals and various repairs and bike lane projects, and that should begin later this spring. And then our FY20B, which is our main overlay project, will happen sometime later this summer. So looking at our budget here, access ramps, we're spending about $650,000. In FY20A, we installed 94 new curb ramps. FY20B, we installed 73. FY20C, we have 31 planned for Hidden Valley. And in FY21B, we plan to install 33 in the downtown area. So we're making some major headway. There's still a lot more ramps that need to be replaced or upgraded. Looking at our pavement maintenance improvements, this includes all of our overlays and surface treatments. So this total amount, 17 million, includes our proposed funding plus our carryovers for some of the projects in FY20. Looking at the sidewalks, let's see, we're going to be spending about almost $1 million for sidewalk upgrades. Storm drains includes $1.4 million. So this includes a lot of the upgrades to our storm drain systems that are triggered by our pavement projects, but it also includes a couple of large repairs to some long storm drain systems. We're going to be rolling out a pilot project that uses a cured in place lining of those systems. And if that works out well, that could save us a considerable amount of money for systems that have deteriorated or missing sections of pipe. The streetlights project is planned. We're working with Edison to convert the upper State Street section of an old lighting system. It's what we call our 6.6 amp lighting system. It's a very high voltage system. We're going to convert that to standard voltage and install LED lights. The street trees is in planning and construction. That project is to replace missing street trees that couldn't be replaced during the drought, and that's managed by Parks, and I believe Matt Parker is here to answer your questions concerning that. The traffic signals is more of what I talked about, that as we repave through major intersections, we've been pulling in new wiring, installing new controls, and also new call buttons that better facilitate ADA usage. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Ashley Hsu, who would like to highlight some of our pavement maintenance projects.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Chair Wiscombe and members of the committee. Mr. Dewey provided a really excellent overview of all of the projects that we have in progress. I did want to highlight that you'll see we have listed planning, design, and construction phases for the pavement improvement, sidewalks, storm drains, traffic signals. And that just speaks to how we are essentially in a cycle where we're constantly planning, designing, and constructing. So there are multiple phases that are all occurring simultaneously so that we can continue rolling out projects and making these really important improvements. Jim mentioned the FY20A slurry seal project, which has recently completed. And I did want to highlight on that project, we did include a considerable amount of concrete improvements, including access ramps. We got a really great bid price for the access ramps on that project, so we were able to utilize our change order authority to add additional access ramps, particularly on the west side, in the west side neighborhood, which has been a great addition. Some of the streets you may have noticed that have received slurry seal as part of that project are part of APS, Hope, North La Cumbra, Coda, Anacapa, and Garden. The FY20B overlay project that Jim also mentioned, the key streets that you've noticed under construction that are just wrapping up with paving are Santa Barbara Street, Bath Street, and Castillo. And striping is still underway, as well as some cleanup work, but the majority of the paving work there is already complete. And under the sidewalk line item, I also wanted to highlight that a portion of that $916,000 that was allocated for sidewalks this year is associated with sidewalk infill on Hollister, adjacent to the airport. So that is between Fairview and Frederick Lopez, and is part of the contract for construction, or excuse me, for concrete improvements that was recently awarded and will be starting construction here in the next month or so. And I also wanted to highlight under the storm drain line item, one of the major projects that is included in this line item is the Laguna Pump Station rehabilitation. And that's a really critical project to improve our pump station infrastructure down at the outlet of the Laguna Channel. And it's a primarily FEMA funded project, which has been fantastic, but there is a city match that's required. So our city match is reflected in this line item as well. And that project is currently going through preliminary design and environmental, and we expect to be in construction next summer of 22. And that concludes my my more detailed information about these projects, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the presentation.
If we go to the next slide, please, and then we'll talk about the next priority, which is maintenance of city buildings. And I'll ask staff to come on and give that presentation as well.
Hello, Chair Wiscombe and committee members. My name is Angela Oslin. I'm the facilities manager. Today I'll be talking about the, there we go, the maintenance of our city buildings and our capital improvement program. So currently you see a list of projects here in various phases of planning and design construction. In 2021, our initial funding was $250,000 for the ADA transition plan. Because of COVID and budget reductions, we ended up receiving only $50,000 for that line item, but we are using the remaining funds to facilitate supporting the design of the City Hall plumbing and restroom upgrades. You'll see that a little lower there. So other projects that we are continuing to work on include the Carrillo Gym minor renewal. This project evaluates the existing structure of that gym. It's the historic gym originally designed by Julia Morgan, and gives us the ability to make some repairs to it to keep the exterior of that facility watertight. It's currently in design, and we plan to go into construction in the spring or summer here of this year. The Chase Palm Park building minor renewal consisted of upgrading carpet, lighting, painting, and the HVAC system in that facility. It gives us an ability to freshen it up and make it rentable and desirable for when we hold multiple events out on the beach. It's very nearly complete. There's a few items left to do, but largely it's ready to rent, and we're very excited about that facility. The City Hall elevator replacement project. This project is currently under design. Currently, the alternative is to construct an elevator to replace the existing elevator in its current location. It will be coming around here pretty shortly to 90% and 100% design. It's not currently funded. for construction in future years, but it is under design so that we can get a cost estimate that's appropriate to be able to have a planning number for future budget cycles. The City Hall plumbing and restroom upgrades is under design, and we do plan to have 100% design documents ready here later this spring, early summer, and then also plan to go out for construction in the summer of 2021. The facilities master plan item here is an item that gives us the ability to evaluate current buildings over at the 630 Garden block and also the facilities and parks and recreation yard. It gives us an opportunity to evaluate our existing footprint and how we might be able to better economize our footprint for the future. We plan to go out with that design kind of preliminary planning and design contract in the spring. We will submit an RFP. Next slide. Hello? There we go, thank you. So additional projects that we have been working on, we've been working on the fire station 2, 3, and then the past 4, and then currently 5 and 6 projects. There's quite a few of these that are for minor renewal of various systems. Gives us the ability to complete some backlog maintenance item that's been in the system for quite a while and make some minor repairs. The fire station 2 minor renewal project specifically, we worked on exterior painting. So if you have been driving by, you'll see a fresh coat of paint out there. We also replaced the HVAC units on the roof. Those were in dire need of removal and replacement, and we did that. And then currently we have under contract construction of some windows and some doors to help the sound transmission. There are a lot of very loud businesses around that kind of impact our first responders' sleep. We want to make sure that they are taken care of. And so that will be under construction here this spring, summer. Fire Station 3 minor renewal, that project is very nearly complete. That involved interior, exterior painting, interior flooring, and some other upgrades. Also, we were able to we're going to be removing the current windows in that facility and replacing them with new or rebuilt windows to match the existing. It is a historic building, so we're being very careful to treat that building very respectfully and carefully. Part of the reason that you'll see some of these funding totals are still kind of in place and rolled over from previous years because we've been very careful about not having our contractors come in and do work while we have first responders responding to COVID. This COVID crisis has been very impactful to us, and our first priority is to keep our first responders safe. As the COVID pandemic lifts and people are getting vaccines, we're going to start getting back in there and getting our work completed on these items. Fire Station 5 renewal, again, that's windows, paint, flooring, various items to just refresh the building and help make those facilities feel newer and be able to take care of some of our facilities maintenance backlog. Mackenzie Adult Building roof replacement. Currently, we have the Mackenzie Adult Building, so we're actually calling it the Mackenzie Center restroom remodel ongoing right now. Once that's complete, we'll be beginning our roof replacement on that building. I estimate that construction will begin here in the spring in a couple of weeks and should be completed in late spring. The parking lot at Public Works Corporate Yard, there's a lot of words in that sentence, but we're repaving portions of that yard. We originally asked for quite a bit more, but again, because of COVID, it was a concession that we gave up some of that parking paving. We'd like to do some more of that this year, but we'll be completing an ADA accessible spot at the rear of 630 Garden as a component of this project. And then finally, we've got some parks restroom buildings, minor renewal. Those are under design for, I believe it's La Mesa. And we should have that completed here this spring and then to plan for construction in the following year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please, where we'll talk about the public safety projects. I'll ask staff to come on. If Mr. Hess is available.
Thank you, Keith. And I'm hoping someone else comes in and talks about Fire Station 7 because I don't know what's going on with Fire Station 7.
Hi, Brett, Mr. Hess. I can talk really quickly about Fire Station 7 also. Fire Station 7 currently is in the middle of some questions. I know that Fire has asked for some additional funding this coming year to do a study regarding response times that will impact Fire Station 7. It is currently under preliminary planning, and design will move forward once Fire gets some of those answers back.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate that. And thank you, Chair Wiscombe and members of the committee. So regarding the police station, as you know, the Coda commuter parking lot is the preferred site for the police station. And we have been in the process of studying this site over the past 15 months. We've conducted all of the environmental studies at this point to prepare for our development application review team, or DART, submittal, which includes the 30% drawings. We've had 2 concept hearings and 1 work session with the Architectural Board of Review to review the plans, to receive feedback, and improve the design. We received a 4-2 vote at our last meeting with them to proceed to the Planning Commission, where we will give them an initial concept review of the same plans shown to ABR and request a height exception above 45 feet, as this project is a community benefit project, and that will be on March 18th. After Planning Commission, we will submit our DART submittal and work through that process until our application is deemed complete, and we will then know the level of environmental review required. We will also be going back to ABR for additional review. We will then have a new contract with the Cornell Collective for the design development drawings and the construction drawings. And as it is challenging to know how long all of this will take, we are estimating we'll have a building permit in hand in around 18 months, give or take, and a contractor on board within 2 years to begin construction. We're expecting about a 2-year build, putting the new station completed in 2025 sometime. And I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll go to the next slide, please, where we've categorized the next projects under parks and library. I'll ask staff to jump in that are available here.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'll speak to the ones for Parks and Recreation. You're very familiar with the Cabrillo Pavilion renovation. The funding here is really the last bit of money from fiscal year 20. The project was complete last year, and it's not open, obviously, because of COVID. However, we're ready to open whenever it's feasible. I think I mentioned to the committee last time we met that we did run a very successful summer camp program out of the pavilion with staff using it as a resource, but unfortunately not letting any of the public in just yet. And we are using outdoor spaces around the pavilion to support fitness classes, which you may have seen throughout City Park System during COVID. The second project, the Dwight Murphy Field renovation, that funding again is funding that's carried over that was encumbered in fiscal year 20. And that funding is match funding. It started out as $250,000. It's matched with $250,000 from the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. We are currently in the land development review process with that project. Hopefully we'll have a project completion back from planning next month so that we can move forward with environmental review and then on to the Planning Commission for that project. Louise Lowry Davis renovation. We recently went to council with a contract award. This would fund exterior improvements to the building, as well as connecting the building to the outdoor patio by replacing some windows with doors, and other aspects of improvements. This funding is actually matched with community development block grant funds, which we have a $350,000 grant that's matching the work at the Louise Lowry Davis Center. And then Ortega Park renovation is a project we've been working on for the past 3 years. We're currently in the land development process and hope to be able to be wrapping that up this year. I would just go back to the restroom renewal that was mentioned in a previous slide. That's actually for the East Side Neighborhood Park restroom, and that actually is out to bid for construction. And that is another project where we have matching funds from the Community Development Block Grant program to make improvements to that restroom.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Ackery. We'll go on to the next slide, please. Our final slide for project updates. This is under the business district improvement projects, and Mr. Dayton is available to make this presentation.
Thank you, committee members. So just give you a little breakdown of the business corridor improvements. We budgeted $500,000 for that, and we carried over $140 from the last fiscal year. Business corridor improvements generally cover all the business corridors within the city, although we have been focused on State Street as a practice. A lot has been going on State Street, and council has directed a lot of money toward that. We are the primary amount of the money, about half, $250,000, has been used for the interim or the temporary improvements that have gone on, the planters that have been put out, and now we have the pots, the new planters that have been planted, new traffic control devices. We have green lanes going down on the street next week. And then also we refreshed the entire landscape of the plaza, as we call it. We freshened it up according to HLC's approved plan for $140,000. Done a lot of maintenance on the street, maintenance repair. We also put in the lighting, the temporary lighting, and adjusted some traffic control devices there. Bricks, uneven bricks, level bricks. And then we also, council assigned $40,000 of this money for Coast Village Road as a matching grant. They're looking at a property-based bid assessment to invest in that corridor with property owner money. So, and then next item here. So I was just giving you a summary of business corridor improvements. The wayfinding signage citywide has been completed, so that balance will roll back into the fund. And then the De La Guerra Plaza revitalization, you saw Mr. Hess is on it. That's money that's allocated for that planning effort. And then Las Positas multi-use pathway, which is under construction right now. This money was used as matching money for the $17 million that the city received for the construction of that pathway, which will be completed this summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And again, thank you, committee members. Just want to give you a brief update on De La Guerra Plaza. As you know, over the past 15 months, we've been working with our advisory committee, and the committee's been working with staff and the architects from RRM Design Group to create a concept plan. And the advisory committee, just to remind you, is made up of 2 members from Planning Commission, 2 from City Council, 2 from Parks and Recreation Commission, 2 from Historic Landmarks Commission, and the executive director from the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. Most recently, the concept plan was released from this committee to begin the development application process, and had a concept review from Historic Landmarks Commission last week. Generally, the reception was positive, but there are clearly some things that need to be revised as the plan continues forward. The advisory committee will continue to meet per approval from City Council, and we have another meeting this Friday to discuss the feedback from HLC and to further refine the design. We'll have a pre-application review team, or a PRT, submittal in the coming months to receive feedback from community development as well. And the DART submittal process will follow that, along with an archaeology phase 3 study that will correlate to the more developed plan. That will be fairly intensive, and again, will correlate with exactly where things will be within that plan. The HLC, just to clarify, is the governing body for this project. Again, the project's really exciting. It's very complicated, more complicated than I certainly was expecting. And there's so many voices that need to speak into the final design to make it truly special. But I'm confident in the end, it will be something Santa Barbara is really proud of. So again, I'm available for questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hess and everybody. That concludes staff's presentation on the status update of projects that have been funded by Measure C since the voters adopted the measure a few years ago. And we'll turn it back over to Chair Wiscombe for any question and answer with the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeMartini and all staff. That was an excellent presentation. I just wondered, can someone speak to the Central Library Plaza project? I think that wasn't spoken to. I don't know if it would be Ms. Oslin. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you could just give us a brief summary of that, because everyone's interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wiscombe and committee members. So the Central Library ADA elevator is currently under design. We're about in the final stages of the building and safety review. Once that gets wrapped up, I believe that's going to be done here probably within the next few months. And then they should be ready to take a look at what's going to take to move forward with construction. The Central Library Plaza project is also currently under design. We just received some feedback from one of our CASP folks about some outstanding questions that building and safety had. We're going to turn those around and get those back to building and safety. And then hopefully that will wrap up the project also. So by this summer, we should be doing the exciting planning of construction. I know everyone's excited about that.
Yes, indeed we are. Thank you very much for that update. Really appreciate that. Okay, it's back to the committee for questions only at this point, and then we'll go into discussion. If you have questions, just pop on here and we'll just go in order, and I'll make sure to get to Ms. LaFont and Mr. Liu, who are here by audio only. So, Mr. Gorin, you wanted to start?
Are you going in order of us on this list, or just in order of us who have questions?
Just put your webcam on, keep muted, and I'll call on you for questions only. And we'll get to discussion after we hear public comment. So, okay.
Well, I'm unless that's now, unless there's nobody ahead of me.
I'm sorry, do you have questions? I didn't hear you. Cut out.
I do have questions, but I just want to make sure I'm not like speaking out of turn here. Usually Steve is ahead of
you're
me.
not.
Okay,
no,
great.
You're not.
I guess, well, I have two things. One of them is definitely a question here. The other one is let me just start with my simple question. Could we get some more clarity on the $428,000 that is being spent on the restroom upgrades in City Hall? That it seems like a huge number to me, and maybe I'm just not grasping the scope of the project, but it's almost $500,000 for upgrading some restrooms, and what are we doing exactly?
Sure. Hi, committee member Gorin and committee members. So part of this funding is for design, and the other part of this funding is for construction. What needs to happen with those restrooms, if you've been in them at all, they're not accessible. They're not fully accessible at all. So we'll be completely remodeling all of that space. Additionally, because of the age of that building, we found that there might be some deficiencies or some repairs in the plumbing system that are downstream of those particular units. So it's a little bit more extensive than it sounds, just in terms of minor renovation.
Are you having to actually move walls to accommodate the minimum accessibility dimensions and things?
We may, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I completely understand now. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon. Do you have other questions or is that it for now?
I do. It's more of a general question on the whole presentation, and I can wait until the end.
Okay, okay, fine. Thank you very much. Mr. Byrne, you have
Yes,
questions?
I have a question for Mr. Dewey, and it regards the slurry seal on Cabrillo Boulevard. It appears that after the recent rain, it's crumbling away in many places. And so my question is, what went wrong there? Is there risk to the other slurry seal areas? And does the contractor have any liability to fix that?
Committee Member Byrne, the slurry seal actually, they did a good job on it. It is holding up, but what's happening underneath is that water's coming up underneath the road base. And this has been happening for a period of years. So it's actually popping off the new slurry seal, the old slurry seal, and some of the pavement underneath that. So we're making some, taking some core samples and diagnosing what exactly is going on. It's possible that we may have to dig deep, put in more road base, but it's a hydraulic action that happens when water builds up and permeates the road base. So it really didn't have anything to do with the slurry seal itself. So we won't be going after warranty with the contractor, but we will be fixing it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Mr. Epstein, you have questions?
My only question was about what we're anticipating the challenges are around the design pushbacks with the police station in terms of additional costs or what's anticipated there. Maybe too early to know.
Maybe Mr. Hess could address that. I suspect it's probably too early, but yeah, there he is. Okay.
Member Epstein and Chair Wiscombe, that's a great question. I don't know what type of pushback we're going to get. I would say that it is too early to be able to articulate it very well. I hope it's nothing though.
Well, this town is never nothing, but I hope you're right.
Thanks.
I'm glad we're injecting a little bit of humor in here. Further questions, or are you at it for now? Okay, that's it for now. Ms. LaFont, do you have any questions or any questions?
My question is, I live on the west side, so we're the recipient of a lot of those access ramp improvements, which is great. But can you just like give me a general idea of what the cost is per ramp approximately?
Certainly, Committee Member LaFond, approximately per ramp, the cost to construct is between $12,000 and $15,000. I believe with the contract where we were able to add a bunch of ramps on the west side, the price came in at $10,000 per ramp, which was a really, really great price. So we wanted to get as many built as we possibly could with our change order authority.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaFont. Mr. Liu, do you have any questions? He might have lost his audio. Mr. Liu? Okay, seeing that he's not. Okay.
No, I don't. I have no questions.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a couple questions. This goes back, Mr. Dewey, if you could come back on. This is just a quick question. Something that, well, I had a couple things here. Thank you. You referred to FY20 A, B, and I think there was some C. I've never heard those terms before. Can you tell me what those are?
Sure, Chair Wiscombe. In the past, prior to this year, we've always divided our pavement maintenance program into two phases, an A phase and a B phase. And typically in the A phase, we focused on surface treatments like slurry seal, and then we also incorporated concrete improvements that eventually would fold out when we did the overlays. And then the B phase would be just overlays, so repaving projects. And what happened was this year is that we brought in a third phase called C that was focused only on concrete that was related to work that was coordinated with the streets crew paving. So, this year, in the past, we've had, two phases, A and B. So A, just think of it as slurry seal and surface treatments with concrete. And then B would be the overlay and the paving projects. And so this year, and I think going forward, we probably will have three phases, and they will be basically the same. The A phase would be slurry seal, the B phase would be paving, and the C phase would be concrete.
Great. Thank you for that. I just hadn't heard those terms before, so I was wondering what they related to. And let's see, what else do I have? I'm just my slides here. Sorry, I'm taking. Oh, I also wanted to ask you about in for drains. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Chair Wiscombe, you broke up a little bit. I didn't quite hear you.
I was curious about this cured in place lining for storm drains.
Yeah,
that's an interesting concept.
Yeah,
is this something that's tried in other places that's been successful, or?
Yeah, it's something that's a commonplace. We've used it for our sewer systems before. Basically, what they do is they take a thin membrane sock and they permeate it with what would you call it? With a material resin. There you go. So it's kind of like a surfboard type of construction. They take the sock and they inject it into the pipe backwards. So it kind of goes in like a sausage and goes through all the way through the pipe. And then they either inject steam into it or they treat it with UV, and that causes it to harden, and then they just cut the ends out of it. So essentially it makes a pipe within a pipe. And one of the positive things about it is that we have corrugated metal pipe that, just the corrugations affect the flow. And when you have a nice smooth pipe, we can flow more water, even though we're decreasing the diameter slightly.
That's great. Good. Thank you for that explanation. That sounds like a money saver.
Yes, it is.
Obviously. And I was kind of concerned about, you put this in and it's cured in place. How long does it take? But you've explained that with the technology that it's not going to take that long to cure. So yeah. So yeah. We don't have that risk of, yeah. And then the Laguna pump station, I was pleased to see that on here. Is that also in response to the sea level rise adaptation plan?
This particular phase is not in response to that, although we are thinking very much about that as far as the future location of that plant, what it's going to look like. Right now, we got a FEMA grant for that, and it's related to sea level rise, but not our sea level rise planning. So it's basically to convert the pumps. Right now, the pumps are engine driven. They use natural gas as a system. We're going to convert those to electrically driven pumps. We'll have a diesel generator for backup. And we basically want to have more resiliency immediately and just have that system more reliable. We'll also be doing a lot of work in the channel and in the seawall there.
Okay. Will be coordinated with the the best available science that we have used in developing the sea level rise mitigation plan. Is that correct?
Yes, and then everything that all the future discussions and planning will bring all of that together into the larger plan.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And I think I have one more question mark on here. This would be for Miss Osland, if you could come back on.
Hello, Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you. Thank you. I was really interested in this facilities master plan. So is this limited to Garden, 630 Garden and the Laguna Parks space? Is that strictly what we're using, what's being looked at in this facilities master plan? That's part A. And B is, are we contemplating at some point a facilities master plan that involves all of our public infrastructure? I mean, our buildings and things.
Thank you, Chair Wiscombe. So to answer that, this particular phase of facilities master planning does specifically have to do with the 630 Garden Public Works area and also with Park and Rec. So basically these two city blocks, if you will. At the same time, they'll also include the annex yard. We've got some things that are going on over there that we need to be planning for, including the future of DSAL. What I perceive to happen in the future probably is this is going to inspire at least a look at our facilities throughout the city overall, but that's not something that's an immediate discussion, but it is in the back of my mind.
It's wishful thinking at this point that hopefully get implementation point. Yeah, a very efficient thing to have for, you know, for future planning and future use of Measure C funds too. So thank you very much for that answer. And that that concludes my questions. Mr. Gorin, I saw up on, did you have something else? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair Wiscombe, I did. And it's just a general overall about the report. So the previous meetings, it's been presented sort of one project per page and really a lot of detail about the project. And there was more data about each project. And then, you know, we've asked several times now to have this sort of checklist on each project of which priorities of Measure C, which boxes it checks. I mean, I think we've asked for that 3 times at this point, and it went into the minutes in October. If you look at paragraph 2 under item 5 of the minutes, that's us specifically asking that we have this checklist included on the project pages. And it says project pages. That's what we had in previous reports. And this one was informative today, but the previous level of detail, I think, is more informative and easier to follow, both for me and probably if the public's watching this, for them. But you know, we've been consistently asking for this, and we've been consistently not seeing it on these reports. And we'd really like you to include that. And then also we had asked that we also get the presentation of cumulative project costs to date for each of these projects, because it's one thing to see how much funding there is available for a project overall in a budget, but it's also really helpful to see what has it cost us so far, so that, you know, we see, where are we within that budget? Are we almost at the end of it? Are we going to come in way under budget? It's really helpful for everyone to be able to keep tabs on things that way, and we can't do it without that data. So I prefer the previous report formats that we were getting, with one project per page, and with, if you just go back and look at those, you know, everything that was being shown per project. But I want to know if it matters if we make requests or not. I mean, I don't mean to sound, you know, pithy, but I mean, we've asked for this checklist like 3 times now, and we're still not seeing it. And
if you go back to, could we go back to slide 4, please? Because I think this has addressed what the committee asked for, and Mr. DiMartini just came on. Yeah, if we could put, these are the priorities that council set out for the first 5 years, and funding allocations and priorities, and this presentation has been organized by these priorities.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
DiMartini would probably, and let's discuss this after public comment. But Mr. DiMartini may have a comment on this. I actually thought this did address what the committee asked for in terms of priorities. So we'll take that in form of a question, and then we're going to go to public comment, and then we can discuss this further.
Yeah,
Yes.
if this isn't the right time to cover this,
we're really
we'll
in
do
the
it at the end.
question period.
Okay.
So Chair Wiscombe, would you like me to respond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
great. So,
Thank you.
Sure. Committee Member Gorin and Chair Wiscombe, I appreciate the question. And so I did want to confirm that staff did hear you. We took the feedback that the committee gave during the presentation of the annual accountability report back in October about the request to include project cost information in future project pages for the annual accountability report, and also ensure that we include what council priorities these projects fall under. And so the second piece of the feedback that was articulated to staff during the October meeting, we included in this presentation. This presentation, the intent of it is to provide simply an update. This is an update presentation to the committee members on the status of Measure C funded projects. And staff tried to organize the content of this presentation under those priorities, as Committee Chair mentioned earlier. When it comes time for staff to produce the annual accountability report, which will get us, after the fiscal year is closed out, once we close the books and we prepare the annual report, staff will work on the second part of your request, which is the total project costs, and ensuring that the annual accountability report includes the city council priorities as well. So staff are planning to implement both of those requests, committee members, for the annual accountability report, which is a once-a-year report.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. DiMartini. That's kind of how I thought it was going to go too. So I think the part that's missing is that Mr. Gorin mentioned is not at this presentation, but at the annual accountability report. That's when we'll get the other information. And with that said, I'm not seeing any other questions coming up. So let's move to public comment. And do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item?
Chair Wiscombe, I'm monitoring public comment right now, and I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. Okay, if someone does pop on, just let me know, and we can get them. These, remote meetings are sometimes difficult for people. So at this point, I'll close public comment, but I'll reserve the right to reopen it if someone does pop on in the next minute or so. So let's move on to a discussion by the committee of the report. Would anyone like to start? Mr. Byrne, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd just like to follow on with what Mr. Gorin said. And I agree with what he said, but I assume that since this was a mid-year update, they wouldn't necessarily put in the things we asked. However, I would expect that the items that we asked for should be in the annual accountability report. The other thing I would say is that when we've asked these things to be categorized, at least when I have, we want them categorized by what the voters saw. And so that was the column on the left. And it's nice what the city council wants, but I think the projects and the voters should see what was on the ballot. And those were it should be categorized by those things on the left. And then you could add what the city council decided were the priorities. But what the voters voted for is what I think should be shown in the accountability report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Byrne. Any other discussion from committee members on?
Maybe to make sure that the point I just made gets remembered, I request that it be included in the minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else have any discussion items? Okay, I'm not, Mr. Gorin, go ahead. I have
I
some.
guess
Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess this was the right place rather than where I did it before. So I was mistaken that, you know, I didn't realize that these comments were specific to only this one annual accountability report. My understanding is that they would just apply to these updates. I'm struggling with a compelling reason to exclude them from the mid-year update, but only provide them in the annual accountability report. I mean, certainly the checklist could be on all of them very easily. Maybe we don't have budget numbers for the mid-year report to give us the cost to date, and we would only have that once annually. And that, you know, if that's the case, I understand that. But there's no reason at all why we can't present this committee and the public with that checklist of which box each one of these projects checks. And to be really clear, Chair Wiscombe, yeah, we have a slide that says this is what the council's priorities were, but what we're talking about is something very specific, and that is a checklist with check boxes, and next to each checkbox is one of those priorities. And when we see a project, it will check one or more of those boxes and make it very clear to everybody, yes, this is how this project is meeting up with the goals of Measure C. Every one of these projects I've seen so far clearly does meet up with the goals of Measure C. And I just think it's of benefit to us and the public and everyone to have real clarity on that, so everybody understands where this big investment's going to. And then I'd also take this opportunity to say that I continue to be incredibly impressed with how the city is managing these funds and putting them into some very real projects that have very real impacts and quickly. It's been really refreshing to see all this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorin. I agree with that comment. So I just want to be clear on this. Mr. Gorin, if you come back on, I want to be clear on this. Are you talking about an actual checklist for the priorities articulated in the 2017 measure, or the priorities for the first 5 years that City Council established? And
Sure,
I mean, we can do a checklist, but which one are you referring to?
I'm talking about the first one, the priorities articulated in the measure that, you know, people said, I'm voting for this. And so what they would see on each project is, yeah, these are two of the things that were on there, et cetera.
So,
of course, City Council has the ability to prioritize things how they feel, but regardless of how they do that, a project is going to check these, you know, various boxes, and that needs to be the ones from the measure.
Yeah. City Council's direction was more specific than what was articulated in the 2017 measure. So I think we could ask staff to include what was articulated in the 2017 measure in a checkbox, and on each thing that's discussed, put that down, or generally on a page. I think it's been organized well in terms of priorities for the first 5 years. In terms of what we just saw, I appreciate how it was organized, and I think it was a great job. But I understand what you're saying, so we'll get those comments in, and hopefully Mr. DeMartini and staff can work on actually finding out a way to articulate that to satisfy what you're saying, which is, you know, what the public voted for. So thank you for that. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. I really appreciate it. Mr. Byrne, did you have something else to add?
Well, it wasn't about this specific report. It was a kind of a general maybe question or comment. So if there's more on the report, then you could
Yes,
go
we're
on.
on the
Otherwise,
report. We're on the report right now.
Okay, so I'll wait. I have another question later.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm on to my comments, and I appreciate staff and the hard work that you've done, and I echo Mr. Gorin's comments about it's incredible how well this money is being spent, and really we're seeing it on the ground, and it's really great. It's made just a huge positive impact in our city. I have so many pages here that I wanted to talk about, but I can't really find what I'm looking for at this point. I appreciate the coordination on the Laguna pump station project with the sea level rise adaptation plan, which has been adopted by City Council. I think the innovative approaches that staff has taken, for instance, the storm drains that I asked about with the cured in place lining, the sausage, I'll call it the sausage on those is really great. We're starting to use technology that I think will not only save us money, but save us time and save us further angst down the road on when some of the infrastructure is starting to fail. I appreciate money going to replacing street trees. I didn't ask a question about that, but I hope that we have a plan that's in Parks and Recreation that basically shows where we, not only where we have missing trees, but where we really need street trees, where there are blocks devoid of street trees in our city. So I'm hoping that there's some effort being made to look at that. I don't remember what year that was done. It was back when I was on the Parks and Recreation Commission. So it was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Let's see, what else did I have here? I think that's pretty much it. I did appreciate the organization of the presentation. I thought it was thoughtfully done, and I really did think it responded to what we as a committee had asked last time. And I think a lot of these projects are really well overdue, and it's really nice to see them. The Creo Gym minor renewal, that's been out there for a long time. City Hall plumbing and restroom upgrades been there for a long time. Anyone that's been to the restrooms know that we need to take care of that. So thank you all for attending this and for putting this together. It's I think very informative, and I congratulate you all on the work that you've done. And I think Mr. Byrne, did you have something to add to this? Mr. Byrne, yes.
Well, again, it's not on the report in particular. If we're done with that, I just had I'll just go ahead and make my comment and question, and that is part of, or probably the main charter, if you'll call it that, of this commission or committee is to review the accountability report and then providing a report to City Council. And I think the first year we did that, and then a paragraph or two were crafted and then put into an agenda item to the City Council, and then I think it was read, or they just read it or whatever. And then the next year, my recollection is that it was October, we reviewed the accountability report. Of course, you can't create our report on the spot. And so then the next meeting we had was in January or February. It was canceled due to COVID. And then, so my real question is, Chair Wiscombe, is in your opinion, how are we reporting according to the ordinance for this committee to City Council.
Mr. DiMartini could probably get on here too and answer this, but my understanding is that we are here to review and ensure that Measure C funds are being spent in accordance with the will of the voters. And I don't think we've ever really submitted a report to City Council. Our minutes are submitted to City Council and our meetings are public, and any council members are able to watch them. Mr. Martini, do you have something to add to that? Mr. DiMartini?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair Wiscombe and Committee Member Byrne. I really appreciate that question. And so what staff did, so me serving as the finance director for the city, I am the designated staff liaison for this committee. And so what I do, the person in this position does, and what I did after the annual accountability report presentation to this committee back in October, I prepared a rather straightforward council agenda report, which went to the City Council a few City Council meetings after this committee met in October. And I summarized staff's account of this committee meeting back in October. And I also included an attachment to that council agenda report of the annual accountability report. So the City Council did formally hear and receive the annual accountability report a few meetings after this committee met in October, and it was on their consent calendar, and they took an action and adopted it. So that is the process that we went, and that was a very similar process that was done in prior years.
Thank you for that. Mr. Gorin, did you have something to add to that? I don't want to get into a big discussion about this. This is how it's being done, and we have never directly sent a report or a letter of recommendation to City Council that they adopt the report. Mr. Gorin, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's relevant to this.
Okay, I don't want to turn
So-
this into a big discussion item. It's not on the agenda. So go
Okay,
ahead, ask your question.
I'm going to ask my question and you can decide if it's appropriate or not. So I think the way that Mr. DiMartini is describing our reporting to council is just fine. I think that meets the requirements that we have. And the one thing I would ask though is that if we would just receive a copy of that like directly versus having to monitor agendas to see when it's coming up. And I guess my next question would be, I mean, I haven't seen this happen yet, and I don't expect to see it, but what would our committee do if in the accountability report we saw something that we thought wasn't in line with the ordinance?
Okay, well, let's not get into that question, but I believe that Mr. DiMartini could answer this. I believe that he and his staff could send the committee a link to the City Council meeting when the accountability report and the staff report goes to City Council, and that would, and I'm sure Mr. DiMartini, you would be willing to do that, correct?
Chair Wiscombe, it would be my pleasure to do that. No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That would satisfy me.
Then you're all taken care of on that, and I don't think we need to address anything that hasn't really come up on this committee. Staff's done a wonderful job, so I think we
Chair Wiscombe, could I ask one thing? And
okay, Mr. Byrne, you must keep in mind, if it's not on the agenda, we can't have a big discussion.
Ask that you take a look at the language in the ordinance between now and the next meeting. That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's great. Okay, we're gonna move on now to item number 6, which is consider nomination of new committee chair and vice chair. So would anyone like to be the chair or vice chair of this committee? And don't all step up at once. Yes, Mr. Peters.
I would nominate Jim Byrne as a candidate for chairmanship.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for chair?
I renominate you, Leslie.
Okay. So we have 2 nominations. Any other nominations for chair? Yes.
I would like to
Mr. Byrne,
nominate Frank. I would like to nominate Frank Peters for chair. And I'll remind people that at the very first nomination for chair, he volunteered to be chair. So I think he would make an excellent chair.
Okay. So we have 3 nominations for chair. Is there anyone else? Okay, let's take a roll call vote on chair, please.
Okay, so Chair Wiscombe, just to confirm, what I'll do is I'll call on each committee member and I'll ask them to nominate either, to say if they're nominating either committee member Byrne, committee chair, current committee chair Wiscombe, or member Peters, and they'll nominate, and it'll be whoever gets the majority votes will be nominated the chair. Is that okay with you?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we'll start with committee member Byrne. Who would you like to nominate?
Oh, I nominate Frank Peters. Is that how we're doing this? Or we're voting for? Or,
yeah, we're voting, yes.
Voting? Voting. And are we supposed to vote for more than one or just vote?
Just one.
For one.
Okay.
Okay, so committee member Byrne voted for committee member Peters. Committee member Epstein, who would you like to vote for?
Chair Wiscombe, please.
Committee member Gorin,
I would vote for Chair Wiscombe.
committee member LaFond,
I vote for Chair Wiscombe.
committee member Peters,
Well, Peters.
committee vice chair Lou,
I think he have to log off at 5? I think
I'm not 100%. Okay,
I think he sent Jen an email that said he had to log off at 5.
okay, all right, great. We'll skip them. So we'll go to committee chair Wiscombe. Your vote, please.
I'll vote for Wiscombe. That's fine. Then we don't have a tie vote.
Okay.
Okay.
So Chair Wiscombe, you received the majority votes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I'd like to ask the committee if you would, since Mr. Peters received the second number of votes, if the committee would like to consider Mr. Peters for vice chair.
I'll make that nomination.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, I think seeing none, we can vote by acclamation for Mr. Peters for vice chair, can we not? I think that's protocol.
Yes, I'd vote for Peters.
Yeah.
I agree. That sounds good.
Okay. Maybe we should, Mr. DiMartini, let's just take an official vote. And so we only have one nomination. So I think it's by acclamation, is it not?
I think Chair Wiscombe, I think what we can do is I can just say the motion on the floor is to nominate committee member Peters as vice chair of this committee. And I'll just do a quick roll call.
That's great. Good.
Okay, great.
That takes care of it.
Great. Committee member Byrne? Yes?
I agree.
Okay. Committee member Epstein?
Aye.
Committee member Gorin?
Yes.
Committee member LaFond?
Yes.
Committee member Peters?
Aye.
Committee member Lou is not here, so I'll ask Chair Wiscombe.
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. Okay, I appreciate that. Then just on item number 7, we're just confirming the next meeting date of October 27th, 2021, and that's when we'll receive the annual accountability report. Is that correct, Mr. DiMartini?
Yes, Chair Wiscombe, that is correct. That is a tentative date. Please place it on your calendars and we will send out more information as we get closer. That is when staff will present the annual accountability report for fiscal year 2021. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Peters, yes.
Just a question. I know it's well into the future, but are expectations that we'll continue to meet via this online process at that time?
Well, I know that we're still in the purple tier. I think
Yes, all right, good point.
perhaps Mr. DiMartini can answer it better, but I think we're in remote land for quite a while. Would you agree with that, Mr. DiMartini?
I really appreciate the question, Committee Member Peters. Yeah, as of right now, there is no plan to to change from virtual meetings. We're still operating in virtual meetings. At some point, when it's safe to do so, staff in the city will make the necessary preparations to consider holding meetings back in person. That might be a hybrid approach with virtual and in person. We're really not sure yet, so we will wait and see how that goes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Is it possible to get the report a few days earlier than we generally receive it? It seems like we usually get it only 1 or 2 days ahead. Is it possible to get it a few days sooner, time permitting for staff?
Yes, this is Keith. I appreciate the question. I think it was Committee Member LaFond.
Yeah.
LaFond, yes, okay. Yes, staff will do our very best to get you the report well in advance of the committee meeting. We definitely post the agenda a number of days beforehand. So that will be the latest when staff would be able to provide the annual accountability report to you. But we will commit to providing it to you as soon as we have it complete, which will likely be the week prior, so that you have hopefully 5 to 7 days in advance to review it, and because I know it's a dense document with a lot of information. So I appreciate the comment, and staff will do our best to accommodate that request.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's great. And Mr. DiMartini will make a note to make sure that his staff lets the committee know when anything's getting presented to council with respect to the Measure C annual accountability report. So I think that's the end of our business, and thank you all. And I'd like to again thank staff. I thought the presentation was excellent, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.